Let's talk about Triad Wars Round 2 rule set. So, a few things about it just to start with. Same plus plus wall, no combo. This will be relevant. We got to keep this in mind. Second of all, FF decks only. And the third and biggest stipulation is there are a bunch here, but levels 3, 4, 5 must use at least one of each level, and the total power of your hand, if you add up all the numbers in it, must be 90 or less. Also, max of 177. A lot of stipulations, but we're going to start with the 90 part. We're going to start with the 90 part. And think about this isn't so much hand building, but just what cards we want to be using, and then we'll try to figure out how to put them together into a hand. So the average card, the average power card the average card is going to be 18 value. 90 over 5 is 18. 18 value. What's 18 value? The card I want to identify here is the 6723. That's 18 value. And anyone who has played much level 4 will tell you that 7632s are the kind of go-to powerful card on level 4. Now, level 5 is included, but the maximum numbers available are still 7s and 6s. And 7632 both has a 7, has a 6, and the 3 and the 2 help the 6 plus wall enemies 6s and 7s. And also having a 6 and 7 lets it easily plus or same other 6s or 7s. This is the go-to power card on this kind of rule set, and it costs 18. So we're going to think of this in terms of point expenditure, right? If we pick a card that's a 17 total, that's minus 1. We get space to add 1 cost later. If we put in a 20 card, that's plus 2 over the 18. That removes 2 space. We're going to have to use weaker cards otherwise. So our baseline is using a lot of 6, 7, 3, 2s. Now, we know we have to use a level 3. So let's look at the level 3s. The go-to level 3 with plus wall on is some kind of 6632. There are reasons to use 147 force. If we think about the cost, that's 16, that's minus 2, that's pretty cheap. We look at Buffalax over here. But 2636, 6632, Forbidden, Underlizard, and Forbidden, and Abomination are really the cards we're usually looking for. Without plus wall, you start looking at 1754s or 2754s. But with plus wall, normally 6632s are the go-to. The 3 and the 2, much like we saw in the 7632, help the 6s be able to take other 6s and also take 7s. So it is a very powerful effect. How much worse are 6632s to 7632s? I think a little bit. I think the difference between a 6 and a 7 sometimes is going to be the difference between safety and not safety. They're very similar at being able to capture things, but on a defensive front, I would slightly prefer the 7632, but the margin is very small. And especially, I think like 5 7632s versus 5 6632s, it'll really start to add up. But 4 7632s and 1 6632 versus 5 7632s, the difference is pretty small if you just sub one out for a 6632. So a 6632 is a minus 1. It gives us some space to use some more powerful cards. And I think the kind of default thing to do is think, okay, 7632s are great, 6632s are really good. Let's make a hand essentially contingent on that. And I made 2 hands in this direction. The one I like more in this direction was I started with 2367 Turtipod. This is also, we're now thinking, remember, combo is not an effect. This means pairs of cards that are exact opposites are not as good as they normally are, because even though they do have same and plus potential, we're never getting the bonus of having comboed from that, or because we samed, they can't combo back because you can't combo back through a same or it doesn't flip the extra cards. Here we don't get that benefit, and we do get the downside if we combine this card with 6723, that except for when the 6s and 2s line up for plus walls, these cards are actually pretty bad at taking each other because they have the exact same numbers. It's hard to take the same numbers. Now, this hand will use pairs, but there is a very good argument for not using pairs of cards. And what I really wanted to do with making this hand was set it so cards were good at taking each other. So I noticed, if we use 2376, 7236 is guaranteed to be able to take that card from 3 directions, right? The 3 beats the 2, the 6 beats the 3, the 7 beats the 6. In reverse, okay, Turtipod can't take Brontosaur so many ways, but I'm hoping to use Turtipod first, and then Brontosaur becomes really useful as a recapturing card. And Turtipod can, with the 6 and the 3, sometimes plus wall that 7. Continuing the chain, I wanted a card that could take Brontosaur, and this is why I did end up with a paired card. I ended up with 6, 7, 2, 3. You'll notice this is also building out having card and strength for each corner, which is going to build a balanced hand that can do different things. 6, 7, 2, 3 can take the dinosaur 3 different ways. Now, we're going to have to use a level 3 and a level 5. We can't use all level 4 hand. But so far, I have used all neutral cards, right? They all cost 18. They are all equal cost to the hand. We look for level 3. I thought the natural best fit, though there's a case for going 2 ways with this. You could go 2, 6, 7, 1, which is something of a pair with 7, 2, 3, 6. The 6s and 2s line up nicely. Also, the 1 can be taken by the 3. In general, we'd want to play that card first, so the more powerful card would stay in our hand. But if we want a 7-6 effect on our level 3 that costs fairly little, this would be a nice choice. Its total power is only 16, so we'd get 2 space to get a more powerful card later. While a 6-6-3-2 will only give us 1 space. But I think this is the better fitting card, right? If we look at our 6-7-2-3, we want our 3-6-6-2 to be able to take it lots of directions. It can take it 2 ways, and it can often plus wall a third. Also, we didn't have a way to capture Turtipod 7 to the left, and now we have a pretty good way to capture it if we want to ever start there. So this gives us our 4th corner, and now we have 1 number to spare, and we have to use a level 5. And we have to use 19 power. And I thought the natural fit, we want a 7 down. We're allowed to use 1 7-7 card, and 7-7s are pretty powerful. It's a useful effect. Also, because 7-7's other numbers tend to be low, usually it will come in not too expensive. I thought the natural fit here was 7-1-7-4, giving us that 7 facing down, giving us a lot of up-down power in general. The 4 and the 1 might pick off 7s at some point, and the 7 and the 4 combine nicely. Like, I'd rather a 7-1-7-4 than a 7-2-7-3. Not that I think that was available, but this gives much more plus wall potential on 7s. And this gives you a very standard hand of 4 corners and either a vertical or horizontal card. It doesn't have a particular starter plan. It's clearly very much in the mold of trying to figure it out as we go. But in general, it has cards that are pretty good at capturing each other, and that gives you power and dynamism in every direction. And so I'm fairly pleased with this hand. I think this is a pretty good hand. You'd probably rather have 7-4-7-1 because it's a tad weaker to the right than the left. You might get a little bit of a right weakness, but you're not going to be able to balance hands like this perfectly. The cards aren't powerful enough that you're going to feel you have huge power in every direction. There's probably going to be a direction you're a little weaker, and this one, it happens to be to the right. Notice if we had played like a 7-1-7-1, we'd feel kind of weak to both the right and left. Here, we're feeling a little better to the left, and we're feeling very good up-down. And I think this is a really nice hand. And I would term this a 0 ambition hand, which is not meant to be an insult. It's saying 7-6-3-2s are an 18. That's a very good card, and we can build with cards like that and make a very nice hand. Now, what I'm going to start calling ambition hands is we use something that we know has particularly low numbers, and we build around that, right? And then we have more space to use some power cards. So if we look at the level 3s, because this is the place where we're able to use something really cheap, a card that jumps out is the 1-2-6-6. And we're going to start there. It has a pretty powerful effect. You could also start with the 1-6-7-2 that we saw earlier, but that's a little more costly. The 1-2-6-6 only adds up to 15. So we have 3 spare numbers here. So if we start kind of continuing the same way, right? Say we say, okay, we still really like 7-6-3-2s. I should say 7-6-4-2, you could do it, but it costs 1 more, and it's kind of widely understood 7-6-4-2s, if they're better than 7-6-3-2s, it's really marginal, and they're probably basically a coin flip with them. I think some players think they're a tad better. I think a majority probably think they're actually a little worse. But the point is, it's not worth spending an extra point upgrading a 7-6-3-2 to a 7-6-4-2. Is it worth upgrading to a 7-6-3-3? No one thinks 7-6-3-3s are better than 7-6-3-2s. Is it worth going cheaper to a 7-6-2-2? Most people consider that a pretty big drop off. The 3 works so well with the 6, and there's already a 2 to play with the 6. So like 6272 I think is a good card, and more often they're used in formats like this where they're up, down, or side to side instead of a corner. But in general, I think the 7632 is so clean and so good and so cheap for what it does for this kind of set that like a 7643 might be a tiny bit better than a 7632, but it costs 2 extra points, and that's probably not worth doing. So once we start looking at these hands where we're using a cheaper card, we should be thinking about what we're trying to spend the extra points on. Because if it turns out 7632s are just like the best thing available, or close enough, then the extra points aren't getting us much. And maybe it's worth having that 6632, that slightly stronger card, and we don't need the points to spend. But this gives us 3 points to spend. Now, if we're thinking kind of how we thought last time, we might think, okay, what's a nice card that fits with that? Let's make this circle in another way. 2763, that can take it from 3 different directions, guaranteed. So that's a nice fit there. What's really good at taking 2763? Well, our good old friend the dinosaur is quite good here, 7632. But that isn't right next to it. We'd really want a 7236. Would probably be the cleaner fit if we're trying to make this circle of corners like we did in the last hand. And we don't have to build hands this way, but it is to say it's going to guarantee pretty good power in each direction. Now, I don't actually think that card is available to us. There is a case for 7651s and 7652s as something to spend extra on, but it doesn't seem that much stronger. We have 7624, but again, we're spending an extra point there we might not want to spend. So it might be that we don't really have a clean card to do this with. There's 6712, but that doesn't take that many directions. It's not that clean a fit. There's 7632. Perfect. So we have that nice fit. Now we want, in general, a card for 9 that takes it cleanly. I think I saw one, but maybe I didn't. I think I saw a 6327. There we go. Again, these 7632s line up nicely. The 6327 is guaranteed 3 captures against the 7632. And now we have our level 5, and we have 3 points to spend because we have a card that's total 15. So we can now play a card that is total 21. What can we get at 21 cost? Well, we could get a 7743, though I think none of those are available. We don't need to be at cost. We could get a 7742, something like 4277. We probably wouldn't pick that one. We'd pick one for the 3 corner, or we'd pick an up, down, or side to side. And maybe if we decide, okay, I do want 42772, then we'd say, okay, so I guess bomb is cut, and we'll switch that to like an up, down, or a side to side 6372 kind of thing. The level 5 does not have to be the side to side card. We're not really building hands here. We're more looking at which are the types of cards I want to be using and how do I want them to fit, and then subbing out until we have a version we're happy with. But 7742 would be fine. We'd actually have a point to spare. So we might look at our 1266 and say, okay, we had a point to spare. Let's switch to a 1672. The card I want to identify here, though, as an option is, if we think about it, like 7654, we can't afford. 7653, it's a little better than a 7632, but the stuff really doesn't line up to give extra plus walls. It gives some tri-directionality, but it's not incredible. I think the kind of card we want to be looking at for spending more is stuff like Elastoid, the 676s. I think this is when you get sufficient power to want to spend more. It's just so strong in 3 directions. 7s and 6s are the numbers that matter, and it gets 3 of them, right? This is just a very powerful card, and if it can be set up for it all, if the right side of the board can be left open, there is a good chance this card is just dominating. I also think it's kind of appealing here to start something like 1266 in 7, playing the weak side of it, and just directing the game towards that so Elastoid can sweep at the end. Because again, I think it's a really, really powerful card here. So Elastoid costs 21. That's 3 over 18. We can afford this hand. I'm actually going to put this in as Triad Wars 15, round 2, level 1 ambition, because I think that sort of shows what like level 1 ambition is. Level 1 ambition being like the first one was level 0 ambition. We're just trying to use powerful cards that are around 18 value. Here we used a card that had lower total points to free us up elsewhere. What does level 2 ambition look like? Well, level 2 ambition looks like using a rare. 2281. Now, this adds up to only 13, so we're left with 5 space to do other stuff. This means we could do 7-6-3-2s for 2 cards and still have room for a 6-7-6-2 and a 7-7-4-2. And I think if we're going cheap, the targets should be either 7-6-6s or better 7-7-4 type cards. There is another choice here. If you wanted to go cheap, there is also 1-4-4-4. And this might be a better fit for some hands than Magic Mirror. It's probably a worse fit for others, but they both cost 13. These are the cheapest options on the table. If rares were banned and you wanted to do something cheap, you would end up with a 1-4-4-4. As is, rares have not been banned, though the person who sent the rule set apparently originally did say rares should be banned, and I think that's not going to be the case, but it is possible that happens, in which case, take a look at the 1-4-4-4. Obviously, this is coming out after the round has happened because I don't want to influence other people's hand making. I just thought it would be interesting to talk through where I'm at with the hands. Now, so level 2 ambition would be to use the 2281, and this is going to give more space to kind of essentially level up our other cards to either be 7-6-6s or 7-7s with stronger backsides, right? Because 7-7-4-2 is much better than 7-7-2-2. The 4 with the 7s guarantees extra captures a lot more often, and the 4-2 can just pick up the weak sides of other cards. There's going to be 1s and 2s lying about. That's pretty clear if we start looking at this. And so 4-2 really does add additional value that's pretty important. And I think those are the 2 targets to kind of going cheap in one place to leveling up elsewhere. So I would consider this level 2 ambition. We've created 5 free points. Now, I think I had level 3 ambition. I've forgotten what I was actually going to use as my examples for stuff. But I think level 3 ambition would be something like going a little cheap on the level 3. Actually, yeah, no, I do remember my idea here. We go a little cheap on the level 3, specifically like this plan, 2-6-7-1, which as you see adds up to 16. So we have 2 space extra created, and we do a rare on level 4, giving us 2 cheaper cards. Oops, what did I click? Here we go. This adds up to 13 for a level 4, so we've created 7 space to use higher power cards. We could now start throwing out a 6-7-6-3, right? We could run with these 2 cards 2 6-7-6-3s. Those are +4 each, and 1 6-6-3-2 we'd have to cost a little more. But we could switch the 2-6-7-1 for like a 1-2-6-6 and already just create space for those 6-7-6-3s. So if we were doing this, we're taking 2 cheap options, one very cheap, one a little cheap. We're kind of combining our previous 2 levels of ambition. Level 1 was go a little cheap. Level 2 was go really cheap. Level 3 is combine them. Do 1 little cheap and 1 really cheap. And if you think 6-7-6-3s are that great, this might be worth doing. My initial instinct, in fact, was this is what you should be doing. The 2-6-7-1 seems like a pretty good guard to me, and I really want to run the 6-7-6-3s. The problem with that is the 6-7-6-3s might not actually play very well together without combo. As I said, pairs are not that great at recapturing each other, and you're so often holding on to both of those cards to sweep in the late game, and they just aren't going to play that well off each other without combo on. So I actually started thinking that's probably not worth it. And this brings us to like level 4 ambition, which is to use 2 rares, which was something I've considered, but I think it is not the answer, right? Fundamentally, each of these is -5, so you have 10 spare points lying around, and you've used up your level 3 and 4, so it can be all level 5s. So you could, for instance, run both 6-7-6-3 Behemoth pair. You could run both of those. That gets you to +2 left over and a 7-7-4-2. And my initial instinct was, yeah, I just use these two cards first, and then I have the three most powerful things available to sweep the endgame. But the problem is, I'm still not that excited about the 6-7-6-3 pair. I love the 6-7-6-3 pair, but I think they're a lot worse without combo. And second of all, it's really hard to use these two cards first, right? If you go 9-9-1-2 and 1 as your starter, just say, I'm just going to throw this away as something easy to take back later, something normal to do in no combo games. And they go in 4, capturing it. You kind of got to take back in 2, and you're not going to be able to use 2-2-8-1. And even though you're going to be ahead early, your 2-2-8-1 facing up left is just going to be thrown away uselessly at some point in the game. It's never going to have a use. You're going to have this card dead all game. You're probably not going to find a way to get rid of it, and it'll be your last card, and you'll have no captures at the end, and you're just not going to win that game. And I think the cost of both of these cards is too high. It is possible you could combine Tonberry with the 1-4-4-4. That might have a little more ability to find a use, but it seems pretty low as well. So I think once we get up to kind of this level 4 ambition of just use 2 really cheap things, I think that's too much and the payoffs aren't big enough. But somewhere between level 0 and 3 makes sense. And so I think there are kind of 4 game plans, and then you got to figure out how your hand fits together. And, there are ideas for side starters versus non-side starters here. For instance, Great Sephiroth flaming hand back in the day had Tarama 7-4-4-4, a card I haven't talked about. And, maybe you could do something a little cheaper and do something with like 2-4-7-4 going down just to have the cost be a little cheaper, and then your starters in 8. And maybe this would be bad specifically because people might be using rares and you wouldn't necessarily have control of the squares next to your starter. But pretending you did, something like that could be a reasonable strategy. In general, though, I think the choice is there are sort of 4 things within reasonable bounds. You just play as close to 5-7-6-3-2s as you can. You put 1-6-6-3-2 in there, and then I thought 7-1-7-4 was the best fit. The argument here is 7-6-3-2s are really good and pretty cheap at their cost. There are things that are better, but none of it is worse running weaker cards elsewhere. I think that's a good case. You're running 5 good cards. Your hand's going to be a good hand. Okay. The next argument is, instead, I'm going to run one kind of weak card, but it's not that weak, is it, right? It's like a 1-2-6-6, right? Or a 2-6-7, 1-6-7-2, something like that. It's a little weak, and I have a little room to maneuver later on my level 5. Maybe I play a 2-7-6-5. Maybe the 5 and 2 combine nicely to pick off 7s, and just having that little more tri-directional power is useful. Maybe I get all the way up to a 6-7-6-2, but if I get to a 7-6-5-2, maybe that's an achievement as well. I'm going to make one slightly weaker card that I'll probably get rid of first turn anyway, and have a better hand in the back. Then there's more ambition. Then I'm going to use a rare. I'm going to have one generally really bad card. I know I'm low on rares. If you think rares are better than I do, then you might not think this is a cost. But it gives me multiple weak corner starters if I just want to throw it in 7 or 9 or whatever. It gives me a weak corner starter, and it gives me 5 points to spend, and that's a lot more freedom, and I think I can upgrade to better 7-7-4s or better 6-7-6s. And then there's do a little of both. I'm going to use a decent, a playable card in my hand that's, something like a 1-2-6-6, or I thought the better version was the 1-6-7-2 because it combines kind of well with Tonberry because it covers the 9 facing out from Tonberry and has the recaptures both ways. So say there's 2-6-7-1, sorry. The 2-6-7-1 take Tonberry as the level 4, and I can create 7 space to run better cards, or if I use a 1-2-6-6 instead of the 2-6-7-1, I can create 8 space, and I can create 7-8 space, and that gives me a lot of room to maneuver on the level 5s. And so it really depends. What do you think the cost is of running these weaker cards, and how much benefit can you get by pushing into the better level 5s? I think something like a 7-6-5-4, while a pleasant card to use, is just not worth the additional cost. But a 6-7-6-2 or 6-7-6-3 may well be, and it's going to be really interesting to see the different players' choices. I'm really not sure which way I'm going to go. We can actually go look at the hands. I guess there's not an easy way to leave the screen, but if we look at the hands I've made, you can see that I'm somewhat conflicted. We have this hand I thought was kind of normal. This hand is sort of make space for 7 or 8, right? I used one rare, I used one slightly low cost level 3, and that gave me space for 2 behemoths. But the behemoths, again, they're not good at taking each other back. I was high on this hand the moment I made it, but I'm not so sure on it now. Then the second hand, we can see a balanced hand where I went 7-6-3-2s, a 6-6-3-2, and a 7-7 because you're allowed 1-7-7. 7-7s are fairly cheap because the back numbers are really cheap. So like that one only costs 19. It's balanced out by the 6-6-3-2. Here I use the 6-6-3-2 as the horizontal vertical, and the other cards are, natural cards to use. This one was the one we made, kind of a level 1 ambition hand. I went with the 1-2-6-6, and that was cheap enough to get me access to the 6-2-6-7. This was my let's go as cheap as possible. I think the 1-4-4-4 is a bit better than the 2-2-8-1. I think basically both of them are often dead cards, but the 1-4-4-4 occasionally can take something in a few directions, while the 2-2-8-1 seems much more limited to me. I think it's just really hard to play a game of no combo when you have two cards that are pretty useless. Like even if the setups just aren't that useful. Setups aren't that important in no combo. It's all about locking cards in, and these are cards with really little ability to do that, except in very narrow ranges. And so again, I love the 6-7-6-3s, but they're not as good as I want them to be on this set. I'm a little skeptical of this hand. I think I'm not getting enough reward for using the two cheap things. Here's another one trying to use two cheap things to get more powerful cards for later. The reason for switching from 4-7-7-2 to 2-7-7-4 here is I wanted it to have more captures with Magic Mirror and Tonberry, and it has at least 3 captures. It has 3 captures on both those cards, and 4-7-7-2 would not have a capture to the left of Magic Mirror. So just slightly fitting cards together. But again, I don't think that one works. This is the hand I talked about at the start. It might be my favorite hand so far. I think the cards are pretty good at capturing each other. I think it's pretty good power. But I do think you probably can get rid of your worst card early. That probably gives you a path to starter, like chucking Tonberry in 1 and just saying, here's a card all my cards can retake easily. Seems like a good strategy to me, or throwing Magic Mirror in 9 or 7. And that gives you a starter to the game, and then you have 4 more powerful cards left over. This hand I called Wheel doesn't really take advantage of that. And so, again, maybe a more ambitious hand is the option. Right now, Wheel's probably my favorite of the hands. But I do think something like this, probably not this exactly, but something like this, probably with Magic Mirror, not Tonberry. I probably want to use level 4 cards, not level 3 cards, and probably not running both 6-7-6-3s, but something a little bit more like this. My current instinct, the thing I think I'll probably end up running, is something that includes, what's a better example? Do I have a good example? I might not have a good example. I thought there was one. Like if this hand switched 2-6-3-6 out for some dumb rare, it would then have space to upgrade like Turtipod to a 6-2-6-7. And then I'd have a hand that had a 7-7, had a 7-6-6, and had a card to chuck on the first turn. So something like this hand, but a slightly more ambitious version. Again, ambition I'm not treating as a good or bad thing here. The question is weakening your worst card worth it to improve your best cards? Or is weakening multiple weaker cards worth it to improve multiple best cards? And I have no idea the answer, but my instinct is you should probably weaken one card to strengthen one card as a potential sweeper. And so this hand, where I drop Under Lizard, the 2-6-3-6, and upgrade Turtipod to Elastoid or one of the behemoths, strikes me as the direction I should go. That's currently where I'm thinking. And then, of course, have to figure out, I want the cards to be synergizing. I want them to be good at capturing each other, which, again, is difficult without combo. So I need, like, raw power to regularly be capturing. and maybe have a starter in mind. But my starter's probably built in. It's probably chuck the stupid rare in a corner where it's just a weak card, right? Just give me something I can take back later and have the rest of my cards ready to fight against whatever they do. That's my current instinct. On second turn, I kind of hope I never have to play the rare. And obviously, having a dead card in your hand is a cost, but I'm sure sometimes it will find a way to get into the game usefully. But there is a case for just going balanced, making sure all your 5 cards are good, in which case I quite like this hand. And so I'm probably, when I play my game, going to be running this hand or a hand of the type I just said, and or switching between them, because my instinct is those are the 2 hands that look good to me. But I wanted to talk this out. I hope it was kind of interesting to hear. This isn't really much hand building because I'm not like planning around a starter or anything. But I think most tournament play is kind of, can you pick more powerful cards than your opponent, and then can you play well? And so here I'm really focused on. It seems like there's a lot of room to maneuver. I've focused on 7-6-3-2s as a kind of center point. I'm sure other people will see it very differently, but I hope the logic of what I'm doing makes some sense and can be compared to whatever it is you decided to do. And I'm curious to see what people build. But identifying what's powerful under these stipulations is an interesting exercise, and this is where I've ended up.